All right, so today we're going to talk about 10.3 roots as powers and rational exponent and how those are connected. So we're going to talk about what happens when we have an exponent that's rational, which means it's a fraction, and how it's connected to, let's say, the square root, the cube root, and so on. So first we're going to talk about when we have an exponent that's a fraction, and that fraction has a 1 up top, such as this example right here. Right, so we have a to the 1 over n. And we want to be able to connect that exponent form to our radical form. And so radical form means that it should have some kind of square root in it. It's our radical, the square root sign. And a is our base, so that base a comes on the inside. And then the key thing here is this n, right? So that n in the denominator of our exponent tells us what root we are taking. So if we look here, we would be taking our nth root, right? So that n is that little number out front. Think about when you have a square root, there's nothing out there, but we know that it's a square root. If there's a 3 out there, we're thinking, okay, we're taking the cube root. And so that's what we're going to work on. We're going to work on going between these two forms. So we have exponent form and we have radical form. So if we look at this first one, we have a to the 1/2. And we want to turn it into radical form. So we go over here and we say, all right, my base is a, it goes on the inside. And that n underneath my 1 in the exponent is going to go on the outside. So if we were to put that little 2 out here, is just fine. Or, since it's going to be a square root, since it's 2, you don't have to put that at all. So it's up to you whether you want to put that 2 or not. It doesn't really matter. But you should know that if you don't see it, then you're taking the square root. Okay, so let's move over to this one. We have x to the 1/5. So again, we have a rational exponent that we want to change into radical form. So we're going to put our base x on the inside, and our denominator is 5, so that is the root that we are taking. So that goes out front. And notice we could put a 1 in here, but since it's a 1, we don't have to deal with it right yet. We'll talk about what happens when it's not a 1 in a minute. All right, so now we want to go backwards. We want to go from radical form to exponent form. And so b is our base, right? Still our base b. So we want to bring out our b. Then we got to figure out what exponent. So since there's a radical, it should be a fraction. Right? So we can put our fraction bar up there. There's no number out front, so that tells us our denominator should be a 2. And as of right now, since there's only the radical, we know that there's got to be a 1 up top. So you get b to the 1/2. Let's move over here. This time we have our y as our base, and we want to put it into exponent form. So we've got y, our base. It's radical, so we need to have a fraction for our exponent. There's a 7 out front, and so the 7 goes underneath. And I know this might not look like an exponent, but this portion, that 1/7, is our exponent. Okay, so that is what happens when m is 1. So now we're going to look at what happens when m is not 1. All right, so if we look here, we have our exponent version, and we have a to the n over m. And so that tells us we have some fraction that might not have a 1 on top. And so again, we still toss our base on the inside. The m, right, still what we did last time, the m comes out front here, whatever root we're taking. And the only difference now is that we can put our n on the inside there. So that tells us we're going to do a to the nth power, and then we're going to take the mth root. This is also, so looking through here, this is also the same as if you wanted to do m root of a and then raise it to the n power. So this order, whether you put it on the inside or the outside, doesn't matter so much, as long as you do one and then the other. So let's look at this first one. So our base we have is x. And our denominator, just like we did in the previous, our denominator goes out front, so we get this 4 out front. And we're going to raise it to the third power, so we can put that there. Or you could write it as the fourth root of x, and then raise that whole thing to the third power. Either one of those works. All right, so let's work backwards. Now we're looking at putting into exponent form. So y is our base, it's on the inside, so y comes out here. We want to put it in exponent form. There's a radical, so it should be a fraction. And we take the number out here, our outside number, to be our denominator, and this inside power, 3, to be our numerator. And so that is our exponent form of this radical.